My name is Bob Heacock. I am 71 years old. I was born in the East Coast, but I moved to San Francisco in 1970. So I've been here now for 48 years. And I sail boats on Spreckles Lake.
Can you give me a little bit of history of the Model Yacht Club and then Spreckles Lake itself?
Yes, the Model Yacht Club was established in 1898, which makes it the oldest still operating Model Yacht Club in the nation. Originally, they sailed boats on Stowe Lake, which is up the road a little bit here. But when they were building Golden Gate Park, there's a very wealthy lady named Alma Spreckles, whose husband had a sugar company. And her husband, Adolph Spreckles, was interested in model sailboats. And so Alma, as a present for her husband, paid the money to have Spreckles Lake built. It's nice having a wealthy family for your hobbies like that. So this lake was built in about 1905 to 1906. And it was not all nicely developed like it is now. At that time, the trees were all 10 feet tall. And it was either just a dirt bank or it was just rocks. But over the years, the trees have grown, concrete sidewalks have been put in, and it's now one of the finest model yachting facilities in the United States. The clubhouse was built in 1937. It was a WPA project. That's the Works Progress Administration. And that was one of those projects that President Roosevelt put together to give people a job during the Depression. Franklin Roosevelt himself was into model sailboats. And so it was a rather simple thing for Adolph Spreckles, the sugar baron, to go to the president, since the two gentlemen had a common interest, and ask if the WPA could build a clubhouse for the Model Yacht Club. Consider it done. So that's how the clubhouse got here, and it is a great example of what's called mission revival architecture.
Okay, so when did you say that it was first founded, Model Yacht Club?
Originally founded in 1898.
Okay. And so you guys who stores their boats in here?
Well, it's storage for members. And as you can see, we have a large collection of what are called free sail sailboats. All of these over here. These are the old style that were built and sailed without radios. This is how this was done before radio control came in the mid-1950s. To sail these up and down the lake, you have either a vane, which is a paddle set up on the back of the boat, and the wind controls the rudder, or they have what's called a brain gear, which does not mean they're smart. It just means that somebody named Theodore Brain, B-R-A-I-N-E, invented the system, where the rudder is moved by pressure on the booms on the sails through a system of springs. The rudder will compensate either with the vane or the brain gear to sail the boat down the lake. To sail it up the lake, you pull the sails in, and you usually set the rudder to compensate so that the boat will self-tack, go out and then come back to you. So sailing up the lake with a non-radio controlled boat is, if you do it right, and sort of like a series of hops up the lake. But sometimes things don't go as planned and they wind up on the other side of the lake, and then you just have to go get them. So there's a lot of free sailboats here, very large. Some of them are very old. And directly behind me and behind the Margie, there is a collection of radio control sailboats. As I mentioned, radio control, the first units, which are very primitive with very heavy batteries and were bigger than a bread box, started being adapted actually from World War II equipment to model boats in the 1950s. However, in the early 1970s, the technology had advanced to the point where the batteries were smaller, the whole rigs with servos and receivers were smaller, and transmitters didn't weigh 15 pounds, and that's when it really started to advance.
So what got you into the Model Yacht Club?
Well, my last city in Boston was Boston before I came here. And Boston is a seaport, and so is San Francisco. So it was a natural for me to move here because I was just really tired of cold New England winters. But as for the model boats, I think my dad bought me one of those plastic Revell kits of something when I was about 8 years old, and I liked it, building models. And my mom and dad bought me more of them, and more and more and more of them, until I had hundreds of them by the time I was 12. And I also had a model train set. And you could buy plastic buildings for your model train set, stations, water towers and everything, but I was getting to the point where I didn't really like those, and so when I was 12 or 13, I started building them myself and working in wood. And well, when I left Boston, I left all of that behind and came out here. But I had always been interested in model boats because Boston is a seaport city and San Francisco is too. So in 1970, I bought a kit of a freighter and built it and put RC in it. And it first sailed the lake in about 1973. And I ran that boat for over 35 years. It's now retired because it's just plain. I need to fix a whole lot of things on it to get it up to running again, and so I have others. I have plenty of others by now.
What boats do you have that you put on the lake?
Well, I have a large tugboat, which is 5 feet long. Its name is the Francis C. And it was built by another gentleman in the mid-1980s, and I bought it in a semi-complete state from him in 2013, and I am detailing it and finishing it, and I've been working on the Francis for 4 years now. It's not done yet. I also have a smaller tugboat that is 39 inches long. The Francis, by the way, when it's got its batteries and weights and everything in it, weighs over 70 pounds. So I also have a smaller tugboat, a red tugboat, which I scratch built myself. It's 39 inches long and it weighs about 12 pounds. So it's easier to handle. I also have a small English coal carrier, which is a Caldercraft kit. It's 3 feet long and it weighs about 8 pounds. As I mentioned, I have the freighter that I built in the 1970s, which I ran for 35 years or something like that. On the sailboat side, I'm interested in both types, all types really. Some of our members of the Model Yacht Club are just interested in powerboats, and some are just interested in sailboats. However, there are a number of people who are interested in it all. So I have a 6-foot long, 8-foot tall sailboat called a Santa Barbara. It's a class of radio-controlled sailboats, meaning that all the hulls are the same, and we race them together because the hulls are all standard. They're all made by 2 companies. There are restrictions on the number of square inches of sail, and there are restrictions on the weight. So the idea is to have what's called a 1-class sailboat. So I have a Santa Barbara, which was originally built in 1970. It was in Chicago. I got it on eBay. It was in wonderful restorable condition when I got it in 2008. So it took about 6 months for me to restore it. And I also have 2 what are called Victoria class sailboats. These are 33 inches long. They only weigh about 5 pounds, as opposed to the Santa Barbara, which weighs 28 pounds. The Victorias are a really handy size. We keep them at home because they're not big enough to be a burden and need to be kept in the clubhouse. I basically instigated the start of the Victoria class about 5 years ago as a beginner class because you can buy the kits for $140, and the radio and the servos and everything is maybe another $100. So you can build one and put one on the water for about $240. And it's a great boat for beginners because it's very forgiving and it's also very seaworthy. And then if people like RC sailing, they can move up to the more expensive and larger classes after that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of how I should ask this. So what do you think attracts people to model boats, you know? I mean, not just you, but people in general.
I think a propensity or an idea that you'd like to make things is one of the attractions of it. There's all kinds of opportunities to buy kits and make them. There's all kinds of opportunities to scratch build things if you have the skills. We have plenty of excellent teachers here who can teach you anything you want to know about painting, radio control, electronics, fabricating, working with wood and metal, electronics, whatever you like. But I think that people like to build things, and this is one of the reasons that the whole maker movement, most brilliantly exemplified by Maker Faire, has been as successful as it has. Regrettably, craftsmanship in the true sense of the word is becoming increasingly the province of older people. Younger people don't want to spend 4 years working on a tugboat. However, there are tons and tons of powerboats and sailboats these days that you can just buy, put in the batteries, and run. And at the most basic level, it's fun.
That's the main thing, right? Having fun.
That's the main thing. And this is what we constantly stress out here, is that we're here to have fun. And there are some really nice people in this club who are more than generous with their time, who will teach you how to do spray painting, or teach you how to do the electronics for one of these, or teach you how to sail your radio control sailboat that you have no clue about how to sail. So hobbies in general, I don't care if it's stamp collecting or bird watching or cars or any kind of craftsmanship thing in general, is fighting an uphill battle these days, and we all agree on that, because of the insidious nature of the internet. Is that not only are brick and mortar stores going out of business because it's so much easier to buy it on the internet, but the entertainment of video games and days and days of just watching YouTube are all taking a toll on family life and people getting out and actually participating in things and meeting people. And this is one of the things that we are constantly mindful of in this club here, and it takes a lot of work to grow it, get it to thrive, and keep it going.
So what do you think it would take to really get like a younger group of people into this?
Well, there was a program that I initiated about 4 years ago with the Recreation and Parks Department. Now, in San Francisco, we call it the Recreation and Parks Department, but in most other cities, it's called the Parks and Recreation Department. And it's interesting that we call it the Recreation and Parks Department because there is a recreation empire out there that a lot of people are not aware of. And the Recreation Department offers over 2,000 courses, everything from kite flying to skateboarding to backpacking. And these go on year round. So I have a relationship with somebody from the Recreation Department of the Rec and Park, and he gave us the money to build 6 small radio control sailboats. And to advertise your course, they have a big catalog of course offerings, and so we put our Learn to Sail a Radio Control Sailboat in their course catalog. And we ran that program for 2 years. And I think we actually got 1 or 2 members to join the club. But these were quite young kids, and they weren't really the target audience that we were after. But it was a beginning. So getting a younger crowd involved probably means, as much as anything, getting their parents involved. Because the parents, well, they're the ones with the money who can afford to buy these things for their kids. And I think everyone agrees that parents and children are not doing enough things together these days. All the ads on television about family this, family that, everybody sort of is stressing that, but how much of it actually happens is a very good sociological question. But we are offering opportunities through the Recreation and Parks Department to do that. And we may be building a small class of powerboats next year to have little contests and little events with them out here.
So what's it like seeing the finished product, your boats, actually on the lake? What kind of satisfaction is that?
They're never really finished. You can call them finished, but there's always something else you want to do with them. As for what's it like to operate them, well, gosh, it's almost meditative. It's a very peaceful thing to do. And when I am running either my powerboats or my sailboats, well, first of all, the power boats don't need a great deal of attention. You can just set the throttle and watch. The sailboats you constantly have to be paying attention to because they are, well, sailboats. And the wind is shifting and the velocity of the wind is shifting, and you have to trim the sails to steer certain courses, so the sailboats are a lot more involved. But certainly when I'm out here, people stop and want to talk. And people always compliment me on my beautiful boats. And people want to be engaged, and people ask questions. My large tug and my small one too have an electric smoke generator that produces imitation steam in the case of the older one. And people always want to know, how does the smoke work? And I'm happy to explain it to them. So anytime that you're sailing a boat on the lake here, you are being a goodwill ambassador for not only the hobby, but the club as well. And people just like looking at them.
So would you say that these boats attract a lot of people just watching instead of actually wanting to join, but just like watching on the lake?
Mostly just watching, yes. It does happen that somebody will say, I want to get involved with this. How do I get one? How much does one cost? Well, if you want my big 5-foot tugboat, we can start the bidding at about $10,000. But there are, you can get a fully functional radio-controlled tugboat for $350 and be on the lake the next day, which is what I always tell people, is that if they're interested in this, I tell them, don't try something ambitious to start with, like building a plank-on-frame wooden hull, which would have about 50 different planks, which have to be sanded and then sealed and painted. Just, we'll teach you how to build a wood hull if that's what you want to do. But just to get involved with it, go buy something so you can have something to put on the lake.
So what would you say the reaction is when people walk by, they see your boats, other boats just going across the lake? What do you think people react? How do they react?
Well, they're either curious or they're saying, that's really cool, nice boat. So yeah, I mean, I haven't ever encountered anybody who didn't like watching my boats on the lake. Unless they were the homeless who had other issues that had nothing to do with boats. But everybody likes it, it's the gem of the person who actually says, I'd like to get one, or I'd like to get involved. That's the person we're looking for. The person who's willing to take the next step in getting interested in a hobby.
Maybe you could tell me about some good memories you have, since you've obviously been involved with it for a while. Any good memories that you have?
Oh, there's lots of really good memories of perhaps one of the things about sailing, and people who own full-size sailboats can tell you the same thing, is that the wind and the water and the light is never the same. Not ever. Not in your whole life are you going to encounter exactly the same conditions of wind and water and light and whatever. So there are some days that I remember when everything is just right. The wind is coming from the right direction so that you can sail completely up and down the lake on one tack. You don't have to zigzag your way up against the wind. You can go all the way up and back on one tack. The waves are just right so that it splashes a little water across the decks. And the light, especially around now in the winter, The angle of the sun makes the water almost black, especially in the afternoon. And the light color of the boats on the black surface of the lake is just freaking gorgeous. It's marvelous. So, you know, when things look right, I'm really enjoying myself. And I bring my camera on those quite special days, and I make sure to photograph them as well.
So say like a kid wants to start with model boats and stuff like that. What would be the steps he needs to take to actually get one? I mean, maybe not so much get one because his parents will probably be getting it, but so much building it and then getting it onto the lake and actually sailing it.
Yeah. As I mentioned, the Victorias, you can put those on the lake for about $240. The directions are very clear. You do not need advanced model making skills to make one. Or if you follow the directions and really don't know how to do something and something gets you in a bind here, we'll help you. So the steps are buy one. And build one. Or if you want to take a different route, sometimes RC sailboats and powerboats are for sale by club members. For example, we're looking at 4 powerboats behind us that will be sold next week at our annual swap meet. Occasionally we run across powerboats and sailboats from people who are now deceased, and they are estate sales or sales for the benefit of the surviving wife or husband. And so we sometimes wind up acting as boat broker here. And so that's another way that people can get into this hobby.
Should I go answer that?
Yeah, go ahead. Stop edit.
Hello, thank you. Oh, wow. Yeah, well, a little. No,
It's raining now?
oh yeah. What else is missing? I'll sit quiet.
Well, it's supposed to rain in the afternoon, yeah?
Yeah, so fast through.
So is there ever any competitions on the lake with the boats, sailing, stuff like that?
Oh yes, absolutely. We have 3 classes of the free sail boats. Some of the very large ones on my right are what's called the X class. There's another class called a Marblehead, which is 50 inches long and carries 800 inches of sail. And then there's another class called a 36R, which is 36 inches long. So yes, we have a whole regatta schedule with the free sail boats that starts in March and ends in October. We usually have 6 races for each of the classes. Now, in addition to the free sail boats, we have 6 different classes of radio control sailboats, which start off with something called an ODM, which stands for One Design, 1 Meter, which is 39 inches long, and progresses up to the 6-foot long, 8-foot tall Santa Barbaras. And generally the classes have 6 races per year. which amounts to about one a month. And we have special races that are named for our now passed away club members as memorial races. We have, for the Victorias, we have 8 races per year, and if you win your class, you get a little brass tag on one of our trophies on our wall back here. In addition, some of the classes give away little brass plaques, about so by so, for each race. So if you really sail a lot, you can cover your whole boat stand with little brass tags. The Power Squadron has a few events each year as well. And every other year we put on a big event called Wooden Boats on Parade, which is a club-wide event for all the classes of sailboats, all the classes of powerboats, and it's in the fall, and next year is Wooden Boats on Parade year. So it's a big public relations event. We spend 9 months preparing for it, and we get as many as 150 or 160 boats to display on the Sunday that we have the event.
Okay, so I think the last question I want to ask, how has this model yacht club and Spreckles Lake and your boats and stuff impacted your life?
Oh, Lord. Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I've been building models since I was 8 years old, and I liked it, and it's something that people appreciate my skills and my talents at building them now. So it's a lot of fun, and as well, isn't that what we're all here for in the first place, is to have fun, you know? I think any hobby that you have fun doing is going to impact your life in a positive manner. And moreover, I'm retired. Lord knows what am I going to do. So I have more time to pursue my hobbies, and it's a very positive part of my life, and it makes a lot of people's day at Spreckles Lake a lot better because other people enjoy it too.
All right, perfect.
There you go.